the deal?
All right, good enough. Stop.
The lines on this side, get on this side.
Get in a single file.
No, one single file. Forget it.
Straight along.
Move back, single file. All the way back. All the way back. Go ahead, Curtis. All right, stop right there. Straighten it out. Give everybody room. Okay. Yes. Oops. Okay, let me just address the group first, okay? Make it easier for you. Why don't I stand right there in the middle, okay?
Which way you gonna face?
And I'll face going that way towards them, okay? Guys, sort of circle in a little bit. Circle in. Circle in.
Kurt, you're about to go in to see.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a brief announcement to the fellas here.
All right.
All right, just circle in and let the reporters have their space, okay? For 18 of us, having first set out from Newark, New Jersey on September 4th, that Sunday, with the promise of the wife of our slain comrade, Frank Melvin, that we would do everything within our means to find justice in the case of her husband's murder, we first went to Trenton. We walked 60 miles that Sunday in torrential rains, and it seemed that the weather conditions were against us, the worst rains in the past 10 years. But we made Trenton, and we were granted a meeting with the State Attorney General. And he was very kind about it, but he basically turned us down with a flat no. He said, no, you could not have a special prosecutor appointed. These are not extraordinary conditions. It has always been our opinion that not because Frank Melvin was an extraordinary person or a guardian angel that created him as an extraordinary being, but rather just the tragic killing of any human being is an extraordinary condition that needs to be looked into. The facts all along had hinted that what our people were saying took place were true. The few bits and pieces of information that we had access to seemed to back up what it was that the eyewitness guardian angel accounts and eyewitness reports were saying, that our friend Frank Melvin was slain from the street level. But a lot of people got the wrong idea. They figured that after Trenton, after we were turned down, that the reason we were going to Washington in our commitment to get at the truth was that we wanted to see some police officer from Newark strung up or given the electric chair or have criminal charges filed against them. And that's never been the opinion of the guardian angels, nor any of those who made that long-distance walk. Out of the original 128 who started in those torrential rains and then went through the crippling cold of the last 6 days and probably what was the coldest days of the century, 18 have gone every step of the way. Some of them, most of them, from that Newark patrol of Frank Melvin and some New York Guardian Angels. They deserve a special tribute for the fact of having to put up with those kinds of physical conditions. But the reason for this march, as we have been telling people all along the route, was not to seek criminal charges against the police officers responsible for the death of our friend, but rather the civil rights violations that are taking place all across the country. Some of you members are from chapters other than Newark and New York, and you're well aware of the problems that we have in 28 cities and the 33 cities that we now have operating patrols. Mayors and police chiefs who refuse to meet with us, even at the insistence of other community organizations who've given their official sign of approval to the group, even at the insistence of the public. that uncategorically in all these cities has always been fully supportive of the organization, we believe that the inability of mayors and police chiefs to at least hear us, to at least understand that we represent the views of the average man and woman in the streets of their city, and that the guardian angels of their chapters are their very own constituents, the sons and daughters. Their inability to even let their subordinates talk to us has led to the kind of hostility that we've met in the streets. The kind of hostility that originally met us here in Washington, D.C., yet for some strange reason did not meet us when we were in Baltimore. Why the difference? Because the political officials and police officials there decided that it was a good thing, that they would listen to us, that it wasn't a panacea to crime, that they weren't going to give us the red carpet treatment, but they obviously weren't going to treat us as Mayor Jane Byrne in Chicago, or Coleman Young in Detroit, or even as Maynard Jackson in Atlanta had with the flea bag treatment. So we have been granted today meetings with the Assistant Attorney Generals in charge of the Civil Rights Division and the Community Relations Division. And my appeal to them, because they've been so generous in giving us this time, is to try to prevent these tragedies from occurring in these other cities. We know why the tragedy occurred in Newark. The tragedy occurred because the average police officer did not have the information necessary to understand what it is that the guardian angels were doing in Newark, where they lived, where they came from, why they were patrolling public housing. There was a lot of fear, there was a lot of animosity, and even the most intelligent, the most level-headed of men or women, when put in a situation where they don't have the facts at hand, where they perceive something to be other than it really is, will react at times through violence and will act irrationally. So we're holding the mayors and the police chiefs responsible for that. And hopefully, the Justice Department, through their arbitration divisions, might be able to force some of what we call the hard rock mayors, the hardline mayors and police chiefs, who've referred to us as goon squads, as the worst attack on the American criminal justice system in 100 years, as hemorrhoids and red berets who ought to go back to the north. Maybe force them to sit down in their subordinates and take an in-depth look at what the guardian angels really are. I'm not interested in attending any more funerals. I'm not interested in attending or going to any more emergency rooms. And it seems to me one of the most ironical things is in our 3-year history, on that very first day, February 13th of 1979, when we first started, you'd probably have bet the last George Washington in your pocket that the first fatality or the first injury would have been at the hands of a criminal, a hoodlum, a thug, a drug dealer, or some person involved in criminal activity. And yet in 3 years, every case of verbal, physical intimidation, and now finally a fatality have been at the hands of police officers of various municipalities. I might add, of the 28 municipalities that have refused to even hear the guardian angels. And hopefully by coming all the way to Washington and dealing with the highest branch of legal service in this country, we may be able to get some justification of somebody listening to us and not representing us, but providing that the truth be heard. The criminal matters of the death of Frank Melvin will be settled in the courtroom, will be settled in legal proceedings. But the civil rights violations that are taking place across the country, that are taking place to residents in Newark as they did to Frank Melvin on an everyday basis at the hands of the police department, they must be stopped. They will happen from time to time, but there has to be a way in which federal prosecutors, in which outside arbiters, in which unbiased peoples can come into situations like this and without violence and picketing and yelling and wearing a sheet and banging a drum and flying a foreign flag, a resolution can be brought about that's pleasing to both sides. And in the words of Mayor Ed Koch in New York, who at one time was the #1 critic of the guardian angels, you couldn't have been any more hostile than he originally was, calling us vigilantes, paramilitaries, and good Samaritans who only do good things for the TV cameras. He officially recognized us in a memorandum of understanding with the city of New York, but in his very quaint way and on-the-top manner said, listen, I've investigated this group for 7 months through our legal services division. We've checked them up and down every which way. They're not the panacea to crime, but they are to the cure for crime what chicken soup is for the cure for the common cold. And as far as I'm concerned, they're a better thing to have than not to have. And in the commonsensical form to the peoples of the United States in the different areas that we do patrol, if the mayors and the police chiefs can no longer guarantee the public safety of the citizens who pay their salaries, who pay the tax dollars to run their municipalities, then who in name gives them the right to take away from the peoples one of the few things that may work, that may cut down crime, and it's not going to cost them any money, and probably involve their own sons and daughters. No mayor, no police chief, no public or police official has that right. And that's why we're here at the Justice Department, to try to avoid another Frank Melvin tragedy by trying to get the sides to sit down and understand us. Through understanding, we are assured that every municipality will probably take the lead of Mayor Ed Koch and want to work with the Guardian Angels as we want to work with them.
Mr. Sliwa, isn't it true that the only reason you did this is so you can attract all these cameras? The Justice Department is already investigating the case.
The Justice Department took great pains at a press conference to announce that they are conducting an inquiry. One need not go to the dictionary to understand that inquiry is 180 degrees in reverse of investigation. You are also aware that the Federal Bureau of Investigation requested the documents of the coroner's reports, the ballistics tests, and the written sworn statements of the Guardian Angels who gave those statements right after the murder. The Essex County prosecutor said, you've got no subpoena, you've got no legal jurisdiction, you don't get the information. It is only an inquiry. It's a good sign, but what is needed is a federal investigator to come in and arbitrarily, without bias, without knowing the difference between a red beret and a housing project, be able to determine exactly what took place and if there have been civil rights violations.
Well, again, the Justice Department is following standard procedure. First, they have to make sure they have jurisdiction, and they can proceed to a full investigation. Again, my question is, what's the real reason you're here? I mean, the Justice Department is moving as it normally does in these things.
Well, if that were the case, sir, and you apparently are much more hostile to us than the Justice Department has been, then why is it that two assistant attorney generals, one from the Community Relations Division and one from the Civil Rights Division, is granting us some time to hear our cause? That is not a normal procedure. You've been in Washington long enough to know that. And if you think this was just a lot of PR hype, you had what was probably the coldest days of the century. You couldn't have paid people to walk on that route. If the commitment were not there, if the conviction in the minds of the Guardian Angels who were present on that tragic day of the killing, the 18 who walked every step of the way, were not there, I don't care what kind of a program we were talking about, they would have never made the walk. It would have been Curtis Sliwa, myself, and my shadow.
Haven't you changed your cause in the meantime? Goal before was to do something about this, and now you came with civil rights?
No. You appeal to the Justice Department based on civil rights violations. The wife to the documents, the coroner's report. You see, not being firsthand there, on Friday, January 1st, the police director, upon
Yeah, David looks good. Really
Yeah.
bright.
There you go. They do.
with blankets on. They look like the Russians escaping the Nazi invasion of Moscow. You know how they were trying to flee? And as we said, there were people along the way who gave us food, clothing, extra clothing, and I told them, I said, look, the idea is not to look pretty. The idea is to be warm, and if that means covering your face, if that means covering your body, but the main things were to keep your ears, your hands, and your feet warm.
How long could people stay out mean, really.
Some of them
Realistically,
didn't bother. I mean, there were 18 people who walked every inch of the way from Newark right down here to Washington, out of 128 that started. Some of them didn't need the extra clothing. You know, they just bit their teeth and they grit through it. But some of them, you know, was obvious they needed layers and layers and layers and had to be rotated. I think a lot of it just had to do with their fear of the weather.
Well, it was also cold out there. I mean.
Yeah, well, at times parts of your body would be like paralyzed. You couldn't feel. You couldn't feel your hand. You couldn't feel your arm, and a lot of people would panic. And at that point, you know, you'd have to get it warmed up so that they could see that it was still there. But people, I think, some of them who've experienced cold, maybe not to the same degree as that, but on a level like that, understood it was just a temporary thing until they sought shelter.
Yeah. Well, they say that your body gets acclimated a little bit to that, and after a while you can stand colder temperatures, but not that cold. I mean, that was unreal.
Well, as soon as we knew we were in Maryland, that's when everyone picked up the pace.
How many of you made it?
How many?
18 of the original 128. There was always at least 40 people on the march, but from the time that they left on Sunday the 4th, and we were met with torrential downpour then they took 2 days off for the wake and the funeral, and at that particular point, 18 went step for step the whole way.
It's pretty good. That's impressive. It really is.
All right, lights.